My name is Christina Bounds, and my topic today is teacher-directed violence. I'm a first-year school psychology student at Eastern. I got my bachelor's degree from here, so I just decided to stick around for another 3 years. On here it says that Lindsay Newkins was supposed to present with me today. She's not. She said she was a little too busy, but she was my mentor in everything that I'll present with you today, so just keep that in mind. So hopefully today you leave with knowing what teacher-directed violence is, what it means to you, and what you can do about it as a teacher. I will let you know that there's very little research on this. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is based on very, very few research articles. Like, there's no literature on this, so take this as you will. First, I want to go through some basic information, give you the definition of what this is. It's huge and it's broad because victimization is not something that I can tell you what it is, because it's whatever violence is to you. And so when we study it, when we look at it, it's just any violence that's occurring to a teacher in a school setting because you are a teacher. So for example, this could be students verbally lashing out at you, students physically lashing out at you, students verbally harassing you, things like that. This is not bullying. This is one of the only topics today that doesn't have bullying in the title, and it's because a lot of teachers are worried about using the word bullying in respect to themselves, because a lot of people see bullying as sort of power play, and maybe the teacher loses the authority in the classroom when they're being told they're being bullied. And so I'm going to use victimization and violence against teachers. Teacher-directed violence has many different types. Like I said, it's individualistic. I can't tell you what it really is to you. It's whatever it feels like it is to you, just like being bullied. There are many perpetrators of this. Like I said, it's anyone that a teacher is coming into contact with because they're a teacher. And like I mentioned, there's hardly any research. There's only been one study in the United States, and they did call it a nationwide study, but it only consisted of 3,000 teachers, which is nobody. And it was just on the West Coast and on the East Coast, so they kind of left out the middle of the whole United States. So I did want to briefly ask this question. I know most of you are students, I can tell that now, so this question might not work with you. But if you're comfortable and you want to feel like raising your hand, has anyone actually experienced teacher-directed violence? Yeah?
I have. I guess from teacher to teacher and student to teacher, different ways.
Okay.
I mean, violence sounds like a really strong term, but
yeah, it's
like, just to give you an example, I was breaking up a fight at one point, and a student pushed me, but he was just full of emotions. So, I mean, at that moment, I was, you could say, I was the one caught in the middle, the bystander, if you will. So, I was the victim. Right. But he apologized later, which was really nice, because that type of student typically would not. It was a gang situation going on when I used to teach in Chicago. But I've also been, and this is more subtle, and I think this is the one that's harder to pinpoint, or the one that could take place for years. Yeah. But between teacher and teacher, where teachers becoming disagreeable and you're not able to come to an understanding.
Yeah. I mean, workplace bullying is something that we see in almost every profession, and teachers are not, unavoidable with that. So, unfortunately, it does happen. I did want to ask, because I'm super curious, has anyone actually heard of this or been taught about this?
Actually, my cousin told me to ask this question. Her fiance is a teacher, and he has a family member who is a teacher. Okay. And that family member had a student say, if you don't pass me, I'm going to tell the principal, my mom, that you touched me inappropriately. Okay. And she wanted me to ask, like, how as a teacher would you handle that situation? Because this particular person ended up just resigning. She was like, I'm not going to work somewhere that's like this, but...
Yeah, I couldn't give you a straightforward answer on that, because, every school's different, every principal's different. Hopefully the teacher would be able to go to the principal and ask, hey, I've been verbally threatened, they're blackmailing me, certain things like that, but, I don't really know, just because I've never been in that situation, I guess. I'll think about it. I'm going to give you a better answer at the end. So some basic information. That nationwide study in the U.S. did find that 80% of teachers are reporting 1 to 2 times a year. So 1 to 2 times, not a whole lot to you, but a student using foul language against you or stealing your things 1 to 2 times a year is a lot. Research in other countries has shown that certain characteristics of teachers make them more susceptible, and I will get into that more later. And the people that are being victimized, the teachers that are victimized most, are in secondary and high school and junior high teachers, which makes sense because at that point students are being very verbal with their teachers, and it's sort of seen as developmentally okay to treat your teachers in those regards. So there are many types. There are like a major 6 that a lot of other countries have studied. In the US, we focus on 11 types. Stop me if you have any questions. I'm just going to go through them quickly, but if you need like an example, feel free to go ahead and ask. So the first is obscene gestures, then it's obscene graffiti, theft of property, obscene remarks, verbal threats, intimidation, objects thrown, harassment, internet intimidation, physical attacks, and weapon pulled. And just to throw that out there, no study has ever found a weapon being pulled on a teacher. I'm not really sure if that's because teachers aren't reporting it or it's because it's not happening. I did want to make mention of verbal threats versus intimidation. A lot of people ask me about that because they do seem like the two same things, but there is sort of a power play in intimidation where there isn't in verbal threats. The 2 major types that we see most often are obscene gestures and obscene remarks, which makes sense when you think about who's being the victim. Secondary ed teachers and those students are more verbal and are more willing to know what gestures mean. So who does this? The perpetrators of this, anyone a teacher comes into contact with, really. It could be the janitor, it could be the secretary, but there are 3 major ones that we see, and students are the most because you spend most time with them. So they're going to have a lot of opportunity to do that to you. The next is parents of students, and a lot of people are surprised by this. I don't think teachers openly want to admit that parents sort of verbally harass them or threaten them, but it does happen. And then coworkers, like you mentioned, different colleagues and different teachers will bully each other. I did throw in this comic. I've seen it a lot in my research, and I just wanted to emphasize that parents do this, and maybe this is an example you can keep in your head. The first frame is in the 1960s, and the parents are sort of yelling at the child and putting the blame on the child for that bad grade. But the next frame, 2010, there's this poor teacher on one side, and she's just being screamed at by the parents and the student. And a lot of my advisors have explained this to me as there's sort of a difference now, where we used to blame the student, now we're blaming the system. And so that's where a lot of teachers are now experiencing their violence with the parents of their students. So what makes you susceptible? And I'm going to give you a huge warning sign. Just because a characteristic of yourself is on this list does not mean this is going to happen to you. It's not guaranteeing anything, but research has shown that these people are more susceptible. So the first is overtly religious teachers. And this isn't just wearing a cross or wearing a yarmulke. This is teachers that have accumulation of things. So maybe you read the Bible in your free time and they can tell that you're reading the Bible. Maybe you have a picture frame on your desk and there's a Bible verse on that picture frame. And what I have really seen, the best example I can give you is, obviously there's like a language sort of, you can't use foul language in my classroom. You can't curse in the hallways, things like that. And maybe in your specific classroom you're saying you can't say Jesus Christ. You can't use that. And that's when students are being able to key in to the fact that their teachers are more offended by those things. The next is older teachers, and this isn't because they look older or they sound older. This is basically because they have a different teaching method and maybe a different penalty and attention rate than the younger teachers in the school systems. Male teachers are next, but there is an asterisk next to this, so I want you to take this with a grain of salt, because males typically report things more than females in almost every single thing ever. So it could be that males are experiencing this more because there are less of them in the teaching profession, or it could be because females aren't reporting it. So we're not really sure, and we probably will never be able to really know that. Then we have homosexual teachers and Caucasian teachers with a grain of salt, because Caucasians report more than minorities. And then last, we have teachers who give fewer penalties or detentions. And the best example I can give for you is these teachers are kind of trying to be more of a peer to their students, which I know a lot of teachers are starting to take this aim in their classroom because they want to be respected in that way, and so they don't give out detentions or penalties. They're like slow to reprimand, where the older teacher would be quick. So they are opening sort of a dialogue with their students in a more peer fashion, and so they are left more susceptible to bullying by their students. So all of this is bad. How does this impact teachers' lives both at home and at school? Overall, teachers are reporting lower expectations of their students, of their class, and of their teaching methods, and they're decreasing their motivation as a teacher. Maybe they're coming into class not wanting to give the lesson, maybe they don't want to even teach very much that day, so they just decide to put in a video, things like that. Next is increase of stress, and I will let you in a little secret. Teachers have one of the highest rates of stress of any profession. So when you add that high level of stress and you just throw in more through victimization and violence, you're getting so much stress and you don't know what to do with it, and it's negatively impacting you at both home and at school. It really negatively impacts the classroom and how those students are learning. Maybe they're not wanting to even pay attention anymore because the teacher is just not even caring. And the worst part is that it increases burnout rate and decreases overall job satisfaction, which is horrifying because it takes a lot to be a teacher. It takes a special kind of person to be a teacher. And those people should be able to stay in the profession as long as they can and not be forced out because of bullying or victimization. So I'm going to go over some statistics now so that you understand that this is something that happens, although we don't hear about it ever. A study done in Turkey, and they're actually the leader in this area, I'm not really sure why, they found that 87% of their teachers that are female are experiencing verbal violence almost on a daily basis. The study in the United States found that 67% of the violence is happening from students, 22.2% is from parents, and 10.4% is from colleagues. So those are very high rates, especially from students, but it makes sense because you're spending the most time with them. Another study found that 52.5% of teachers are experiencing an increase in stress. And that's just not good, especially when they're already stressed out from their regular job. And the last statistic I have for you is 25.8%, almost 26% of teachers are experiencing a decrease in their job expectation. So they're not expecting much from their jobs anymore, and they're finding no happiness in anything that they're doing. I did want to throw in here my study. I list a bunch of statistics here if you just want to think about those. This was done specifically in Illinois with kindergarten through 12th grade teachers. I actually did find that kindergarten teachers are being victimized by their students, mainly through objects being thrown. I had a lot of teachers reporting like blocks being thrown at their heads and things being stolen off their desks. So it does happen in kindergarten to kindergarten teachers as well, but the 12th grade teachers, 9th through 12th, those are really the ones that are being victimized. The most important statistic that I found was 52.5% of my participants, or I'm sorry, 52% of my participants were experiencing teacher-directed violence at least once in the past 3 to 6 months of their teaching career. And I didn't find any differences between males and females reporting this, and I did find that 62% of the teachers in urban schools were experiencing this more, and that was the highest statistic of rural or suburban and urban. So urban teachers are experiencing this more. I do have this chart that shows you the difference between physical violence and verbal violence, and although physical violence is on this, verbal violence is much higher. And although I would rather not have any violence, I would rather, I guess, it be physical, or verbal, not physical. I would rather it be verbal because it's easier to manage as a teacher and cope with than if a student is being physically violent towards you. I did want to throw in this. I looked at social support, and if you probably don't know what social support really is, it's anyone in your life that you seek guidance from, you seek sympathy with, that give you advice, that get in the thick of things with you and help you out. And so when I surveyed teachers, I found that 66% of them go to another teacher for help. So that means they're going across the hall and going, hi, please help me. Please give me some advice on this. And the second highest was significant other and partner at 61.4%, which really makes sense because your significant other is very important in your life and you really care what they think, and so you're going to go to them for most of your support. So all of this is bad. Like I mentioned, it's all very, very bad. So what can you do about it? Unfortunately, there's not much information out there on how to cope. The best advice I can give you is to find a balance, to find a way to get rid of any of your stress. Maybe that's running, maybe that's punching a punching bag, maybe that's sitting down and knitting. Maybe it's just whatever stress outlet you can find. That's the best advice that I can give you to get rid of some of that residual stress that you're experiencing from teacher-directed violence. The next advice I can give you is seeking social support. And this could be from one of those that I listed before: significant others, family, friends outside of school, another teacher, administration, guidance counselor, school psychologists, other people in the school like your support staff. The secretaries are really good with this. And don't go to no one, because that's just not helpful at all. I really suggest that you go to the principal and your administration and your colleagues, because they're going to be quickly accessible and they're going to know the situation more. You're not going to have to give this whole backstory like you would to a friend. They're going to know that this student maybe is a problem in classrooms, and so they're going to have that backstory and be able to give you better advice quicker. So overall prevention, first you need to look at your school's climate. And I'm sure you've heard of this. You go into schools and you can just tell what it feels like. If it's a positive environment, there's lots of learning, everyone's very happy, or it's negative. Teachers sort of keep themselves in the hallway, try to get through the day. The next is, and most important to me, is understanding what victimization is to you. Because I can't tell you what violence is to you. It's whatever makes you feel like you've been bullied or victimized. And so understanding what that is going to help you deal with it more. The best prevention is prevention. Never ever intervene if you can stop it beforehand. You need to check your school's bully policy, and the state of Illinois mandates your school needs a bully policy. So if they don't have one, maybe you should tell your principal about that. And you should probably mention that teachers should be safeguarded in this as well as their students, because you matter just as much as the students. Next is actually discussing it with your administrator or principal, because they're not here today, and they probably have never heard of this, and they probably have never thought to think about this. And so they're going to need some information about it. So maybe hand them this little thing that you got today. Be like, look, I'm really sorry, but teachers deserve support as well, and this is what's happening to us, and it's awful. Can you help me? And most important to me is discussing it with your coworkers, because they might be experiencing this, and they don't want to talk about it because they're worried about losing their job, losing the authority in the classroom, or just getting in trouble with their principal in general. What you can do in your classroom and classroom management. I know you've probably heard of that a million times, but this is maybe a different spin on it, because I took sort of a psychological viewpoint and what the APA suggests to teachers. So the first is establishing behavior expectations while you're in the classroom. And that's just normal. All schools have behavior expectations. You can't run in the halls, you can't spit, you can't throw things, no PDA, things like that. Those go into your classroom as well, but you're going to need a list of things yourself, guided behaviors that your students are going to need to follow. With these, you need to have outcomes. You need to say, if you do this, you're going to get a detention. If you do this, you're going to have to write a paper. If you do this, consequence. They're going to need to know those things, because they're going to need to know what's expected of them overall. With these outcomes, with these negative punishments, you're going to need to always deliver them. I don't care the scenario. I'm really sorry if you like Becky more than you like Peter. You're going to have to give Becky that same sort of punishment that you did to Peter, because your students aren't going to know how to act in your classroom if they don't see it all over. Next important step is it always needs to be given in the same exact standard way. And this should not disrupt your instruction time. I know it's going to be super difficult, especially with the older grades, because they're going to be more verbal to you, and they're going to be yelling or maybe throwing things and things like that, and you're going to need to immediately stop that. And I understand. You're going to immediately need to say, please stop yelling at me, sit down, calm down. But you're going to have to follow that with a, please see me after class. Because you're not going to want to stop and open that dialogue with the student. Research shows that if you stop, open that dialogue, and go, get up here, I'm going to give you a detention right now, that leads to oohing in the class. assume that, oh my gosh, she's in trouble, just talking in the classroom. It also leads to that student maybe more volatile to you in their reaction. If they were just being verbal before, maybe now they're feeling, oh, well, I'll just go ahead and stand up and throw something at them, become physical with you, which is never a good situation, especially when you have students in your classroom. So you're going to need to wait, or you're going to need to pull them out in the classroom, pull them out in the hallway and discuss it with them, and you're going to need to be calm. And unfortunately, it's super hard, especially when they just called you a bitch, and you're not going to know how to handle that. So you're going to need to be calm, and you're going to need to say, I'm really sorry, but this is the punishment. Here's your penalty. I hope you do better next time. And send them on their way. Give them the hall pass if they need one. But you're going to have to deal with it in a professional way and get rid of your emotions, because that's going to nip it in the bud quicker than if you just yelled at them and didn't give them a punishment at all. I did want to briefly mention Illinois law. There's a seminar, I think, today. Actually, Dr. Jenkins is giving it, so if you need more information about it, go ahead, go to that one. If you go to stopbullying.gov, there's some information about what Illinois mandates from their districts, and Illinois is actually great. It has almost every stipulation, so things like there's required counseling for both parties, there needs to be a mediator, there needs to be direct language in all of your policy about the bullying and why it's good and what needs to be done. But unfortunately, like all 50 states, there is no mentioning of you, the teacher, in this literature, in this language. So you are not technically protected. But in the state of Illinois, there's a list of like why you can't be bullied. And at the very bottom it says, etc. So technically, you fall under their jurisdiction and within their law. You're part of that, etc. You're also protected. But the most important thing is you're entitled to feel safe in your position as a teacher and as a human. So if this is happening to you, and although our law doesn't directly say that you are safe and that there are things for you and there are people for you and there are ways to deal with it, you should be able to go to someone, your principal, another coworker, someone, and you should tell them what's happening, and you should be able to have it handled, and you should be able to get it figured out so you can keep being a teacher and keep being good at your job. I did list some helpful links. The first is at stopbullying.gov. If you go to this website, you just click on the little Illinois, and it'll take you right there. If you're planning on teaching in another state, just click on that one. It'll tell you those. The second one is a letter about bullying. I think it's titled A Letter to a Colleague, and it's a huge document, 6 pages, and it details everything you need to know about bullying and the policies behind that. The next is How to Cope, and it's from nobullying.com, and if you choose to read this, I will give you a little warning. The first part of this article is very depressing. They're just going to tell you all about the fact that teachers aren't being told about this, that it's happening at a very high rate, nobody knows what to do about it, but the bottom part of it tells you how to cope, maybe how to get rid of some of the stress, and how to talk to your teachers and your coworkers about it. And the last one, like I mentioned before, the classroom management things that I mentioned were given by the APA. I give you the link to that so you could go directly to that and see maybe some examples and some more specific things with that. So that is all I have for you. Are there any questions? No. So I'm still thinking. So you said they just quit?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know this person directly, but yeah, that's what my cousin said. She ended up turning in her resignation because of it.
That's like a worse scenario too.
I know.
I mean, that is teacher-directed violence, and technically that is considered bullying. And she was technically protected. I would hope that a person doesn't immediately quit. I would hope that she would maybe discuss that with the principal or the superintendent before she took drastic measures like that. But, I mean, situation's over apparently, so.